St. Augustine Commentary on Psalm 55. Of this psalm the title is, at the end in hymns, Understanding to David himself. What the end is we will briefly call to your recollection, because you have known it. For the end of the law is Christ, for righteousness unto every man believing. Romans 10:4. Be the attention therefore directed unto the end, directed unto Christ. Wherefore is he called the end? Because whatever we do, to him we refer it, and when to him we shall have come home, more to ask we shall not have. For there is an end spoken of which does consume, there is an end spoken of which does make perfect. In one sense, for instance, we understand it when we hear, there is ended the food which was in eating, and in another sense we understand it when we hear, there is ended the vesture which was in weaving. In each case we hear, there is ended. But the food so that it no longer is, the vesture so that it is perfected. Our end, therefore, ought to be our perfection Christ. For in him we are made perfect. Because of himself the head, the members are we. And he has been spoken of as the end of the law, because without him no one does make perfect the law. When therefore ye hear in the Psalms at the end, for many psalms are thus superscribed, be not your thought upon consuming, but upon consummation. In hymns, in praises, for whether we are troubled and are straitened, or whether we rejoice and exult, he is to be praised, who both in tribulations does instruct, and in gladness does comfort. For the praise of God from the heart and mouth of a Christian man ought not to depart, not that he may be praising in prosperity and speaking evil in adversity, but after the manner that this psalm does prescribe. I will speak good of the Lord in every time, always the praise of him is in my mouth. Thou dost rejoice, acknowledge a father indulging. You are troubled, acknowledge a father chastening. Whether he indulge or whether he chasten, he is instructing one for whom he is preparing an inheritance. What then is understanding to David himself? David indeed was, as we know, a holy prophet, king of Israel, son of Jesse. 2 Samuel 23:1. But because out of his seed there came for our salvation after the flesh the Lord Jesus Christ, Romans 1:3, often under that name he is figured, and David instead of Christ is in a figure set down, because of the origin of the flesh of the same. For after some sort he is son of David, after some sort he is the Lord of David. Son of David after the flesh, Lord of David after the divinity. For if by him have been made all things, John 1:3, by him also David himself has been made, out of whose seed he came to man. Moreover, when the Lord had questioned the Jews, whose son they affirmed Christ to be, they made answer, David's. Where the Lord chides the Jews when they said that he was the son of David, he saw that they had stared at the flesh, and had lost sight of the divinity. And he reproves them by propounding a question. How then does David himself in spirit call him Lord? The Lord has said unto my Lord. If then he in spirit calls him Lord, how is he his son? Matthew 22, verse 43 to 45. A question he propounded, his being son he denied not. You have heard, Lord, say ye how he is his son. You have heard, son, say how he is Lord. This question the Catholic faith solves. How, Lord? Because in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. John 1:1. How, Son? Because the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. John 1:14. Because then David in a figure is Christ, but Christ, as we have often reminded your love, is both head and body. Neither ought we to speak of ourselves as alien from Christ, of whom we are members, nor to count ourselves as if we were any other thing. Because the two shall be in one flesh. Genesis 2:24. This is a great sacrament, says the Apostle, but I speak in regard of Christ and the Church. Ephesians 5:32. Because then whole Christ is head and body, when we hear, understanding to David himself, understand we ourselves also in David. Let the members of Christ understand, and Christ in his members understand, and the members of Christ in Christ understand. Because head and members are one Christ. The head was in heaven and was saying, Why do you persecute me? Acts 9:4. We with him are in heaven through hope. Himself is with us on earth through love. Therefore, understanding to David himself, be we admonished when we hear, and let the church understand, for there belongs to us great diligence to understand in what evil we now are, and from what evil we desire to be delivered, remembering the prayer of the Lord, where at the end we say, Deliver us from evil. Matthew 6:13. Therefore, amid many tribulations of this world, this psalm complains somewhat of understanding. He laments not with it, who has not understanding. But furthermore, dearly beloved, we ought to remember that after the image of God we have been made, and that not in any other part than in the understanding itself. For in many things by beasts we are surpassed. But when a man knows himself to have been made after the image of God, Genesis 1:26, there in something in himself he acknowledges to be more than has been given to dumb animals. But on consideration of all those things which a man has, he finds himself in this thing peculiarly distinguished from a dumb animal, in that he has himself an understanding. Whence certain men despising in themselves that peculiar and especial thing which from their Maker they had received, the Maker himself reproves, saying, Do not become like horse and mule, in which there is no understanding. Hear thou, O God, my entreaty, and despise not my prayer. Give heed unto me, and hearken unto me. Verse 1. Of one earnest, anxious, of one set in tribulation are these words. He is praying, suffering many things, from evil yearning to be delivered. It remains that we hear in what evil he is, And when he begins to speak, let us acknowledge there ourselves to be, in order that the tribulation being shared, we may conjoin prayer. I have been made sad in my exercise, and have been troubled. Verse 2. Were made sad, were troubled. In my exercise, he says, of evil men whom he suffers, he has made mention, and the same suffering of evil men he has called his exercise. Think ye not that without profit there are evil men in this world, and that no good God makes of them? Every evil man either on this account lives that he may be corrected, or on this account lives that through him a good man may be exercised. Oh, that therefore they that do now exercise us would be converted, and together with us be exercised. Nevertheless, so long as they are such as to exercise, let us not hate them, because in that wherein any one of them is evil, whether unto the end he is to persevere, we know not. Enough times when to yourself you seem to have been hating an enemy, you have been hating a brother, and know not. The devil and his angels in the Holy Scriptures have been manifested to us, that for fire everlasting they have been destined. Of them only must amendment be despaired of. Therefore, since this rule of love for you is fixed, that imitating the Father you should love an enemy, for he says, love your enemies. Luke 6:27. In this precept, how would you be exercised if you had no enemy to suffer? You see then that he profits you somewhat, and let God's sparing evil men profit you, so that thou show mercy, because perchance thou too, if you are a good man, out of an evil man hast been made a good man. And if God spared not evil men, not even you would be found to return thanks. May he therefore spare others that has spared you also. For it were not right, when you had passed through, to close up the way of godliness. Whence then does this man pray, set among evil men with those enmities he was being exercised? Why, says he, I have been made sad in my exercise, and have been troubled? While he is extending his love so as to love enemies, he has been affected with disgust, being bayed at all around by the enmities of many men, by the frenzy of many and under sort of human infirmity he has sunk. He has seen himself now begin to be pierced through with an evil suggestion of the devil, to bring on hatred against his enemies, wrestling against hatred in order to perfect love herself in the very fight, and in the wrestling he has been troubled. For there is his voice in another psalm, my eye has been troubled because of anger. And what follows there? I have waxen old among all mine enemies. As if in storm and waves he were beginning to sink like Peter. Matthew 14:30. For he does trample the waves of this world that loves enemies. Christ on the sea was walking fearless, from whose heart there could not by any means be taken away the love of an enemy, who hanging on the cross did say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Luke 23:34. Peter too would walk. He has head, Peter has body, because upon this rock he says, I will build my church. Matthew 16:18. He was bidden to walk, and he was walking by the grace of him bidding, not by his own strength. But when he saw the wind mighty, he feared, and then he began to sink, being troubled in his exercise. By what mighty wind? By the voice of the enemy and by the tribulation of the sinner. Verse 3. Therefore, in the same manner as he cried out on the waves, Lord, I perish, save me. Matthew 14:30. A similar voice from this man has preceded. Hearken unto me. Wherefore? For my wound. For what do you suffer? Of what do you groan? I have been made sad in my exercise. To be exercised indeed among evil men you have set me, but too much they have risen up beyond my powers. Come thou, one troubled, stretch forth a hand to one sinking. For they have brought down upon me iniquity, and in anger they were shadowing me. You have heard of waves and winds, one as it were humble they were insulting, and he was praying. On every side against him with a war of insult they were raging. But he within was calling upon him whom they did not see. But this man being troubled and made sad was praying, his eye being disturbed as it were on account of anger. But the anger of a brother, if it shall have been inveterate, is then hatred. Anger does trouble the eye, hatred does quench it. Anger is a straw, hatred is a beam. Sometimes you hate and chidest an angry man. In you is hatred. In him whom you chide, anger. With reason to you is said, Cast out first the beam from your own eye, and so you shall see to cast out the straw from your brother's eye. Matthew 7:5. For that you may know how much difference there is between anger and hatred, day by day men are angry with their sons. Show me them that hate their sons. This man being troubled was praying even when made sad, wrestling against all revilings of all revilers, not in order that he might conquer any one of them by giving back reviling, but that he might not hate any one of them. Hence he prays, hence asks, from the voice of the enemy and from the tribulation of the sinner. My heart has been troubled in me. Verse 4. This is the same as elsewhere has been said, my eye because of anger has been troubled. And if eye has been troubled, what follows? And fear of death has fallen upon me. Our life is love. If life is love, death is hatred. When a man has begun to fear lest he should hate him that he was loving, it is death he is fearing. And a sharper death and a more inward death, whereby soul is killed, not body. You minded a man raging against you. What was he to do, against whom your own Lord had given you security, saying, Fear not them that kill the body? Matthew 10:28. He by raging kills body, thou by keeping hatred hast killed soul, and he the body of another, thou your own soul. Fear, therefore, of death has fallen upon me. Fearfulness and trembling have come upon me, and darkness has covered me. Verse 5. And I have said, He that hates his brother is in darkness until now. 1 John 2:9. If love is light, hatred is darkness. And what says to himself one set in that weakness and troubled in that exercise, who shall give me wings as to a dove, and I shall fly and shall rest? Verse 6. Either for death he was wishing, or for solitude he was longing. So long, he says, as this is the work with me, as this command is given me, that I should love enemies. The revilings of these men, increasing and shadowing me, to derange my eye, perturb my sight, penetrate my heart, slay my soul. I could wish to depart, but weak I am, lest by abiding I should add sins to sins. Or at least may I be separated for a little space from mankind, lest my wound suffer from frequent blows, in order that when it has been made whole, it may be brought back to the exercise. This is what takes place, brethren, and there arises oft times in the mind of the servant of God a longing for solitude, for no other reason than because of the multitude of tribulation and scandals. And he says, who shall give me wings? Doth he find himself without wings, or rather with bound wings? If they are wanting, be they given; if bound, be they loosed. Because even he that loses a bird's wings either gives or gives back to it its wings. For it had not as thou its own them, wherewith it could not fly. Bound wings make a burden. Who, he says, shall give me wings as to a dove, and I shall fly and shall rest? Shall rest where? I have said there are two senses here, either, as says the Apostle, to be dissolved and to be with Christ, for it is by far the best thing. Philippians 1:23. Even he that amended can't be is yours, either by the fellowship of the human race, or oft times by church communion. He is within. What will you do? Whither wilt go? Whither separate yourself, in order that these wings you may not suffer? But go to him, speak, exhort, coax, threaten, reprove. I have done all things, whatever powers I had I have expended and have drained. Nothing, I see, have I prevailed. All my labor has been spent out, sorrow has remained. How then shall my heart rest from such men, except I say, who shall give me wings? As to a dove, however, not as to a raven. A dove seeks a flying away from troubles, but she loses not love. For a dove as a type of love is set forth, and in her the plaint is loved. Nothing is so fond of plaints as a dove. Day and night she complains, as though she were set here where she ought to complain. What then says this lover? Revilings of men to bear I am unable. They roar with frenzy, are carried away, are inflamed with indignation. In anger they shadow me. To do good to them I am unable. Oh, that I might rest somewhere, being separated from them in body, not in love, lest in me there should be troubled love itself. With my words and my speech no good can I do them. By praying for them perchance I shall do good. These words men say, but ofttimes they are so bound, that to fly they are not able. For perchance they are not bound with any bird lime, but are bound by duty. But if they are bound with care and duty, and to leave it are unable, let them say, I was wishing to be dissolved and to be with Christ, for it is by far the best thing. To abide in the flesh is necessary because of you. Philippians 1:23-24. A dove bound back by affection, not by cupidity, was not able to fly away because of duty to be fulfilled, not because of little merit. Nevertheless, a longing in heart must needs be, nor does any man suffer this longing, but he that has begun to walk in that narrow way. Matthew 7:14. In order that he may know that there are not wanting to the church persecutions, even in this time, when a calm is seen in the church, at least with respect to those persecutions which our martyrs have suffered. But they are not wanting persecution, because the true saying is this: all that will godly to live in Christ shall suffer persecution. 2 Timothy 3:12.